So what's the number one skill that all screenwriters need? In my opinion, it's resiliency. I know, resiliency. How do I get better at that? I'm going to be talking about the 3 things that I think are the core to resiliency and how you can actually go about building it. So why is resiliency important? Well, you're going to get bad news about your script. People aren't going to like it. You're going to hear from production companies that you need to change things. Like, actually, we want to have a totally different idea. Resiliency, if you don't have it, you're not going to make it because you're going to quit. Which brings us to the first component. Don't be married to any ideas. This is one of the very first things I ever learned as a screenwriter, and I would say at its easiest essence, it just means that everything can potentially be changed. Don't get married to any of your ideas. Ideally, don't even get married to characters. Don't hold anything too close. Realize that everything can change and everything might change. Because as soon as other people start getting involved, especially if there's a chance of something actually getting made, new ideas come in. People want to have their own fingerprints on it. This always results in changes. And the reason why is not because of meddling producers. Most of the time, it was because I actually talked to a professional who gave me realistic and heartfelt advice on stuff I was doing wrong and how I could make it better. And throughout all of these processes, I basically had to change everything multiple times. Not being married to any ideas is also crucial if you're ever collaborating with anyone, because this happens time and time again. You're going to come up with an idea that's the best idea you've ever thought of, and your person you're working with isn't going to like it. Or usually they won't even notice how much you love the idea, and they will just kind of offer their other idea instead. If you're holding on to your idea, if you're like, this is the only way I'm ever going to make this, is if this is how we can include my idea, you're just not going to make it, and your collaborator is going to quit. The second component of resiliency is to know the core of the idea. Now, this is a little bit in contradiction to the last idea, because this is something that you shouldn't change. This is knowing what originally made you fall in love with this idea, and maybe it's a relationship between 2 characters, maybe it's part of the concept, maybe it's how the character grows. Usually it's how the character grows or the theme, at least I found in my work. This is something really important to continue holding on to, because no matter how much the script changes, this is something that hopefully is going to stay the same or just become more tightened and focused over time. I'm working with a guy who was able to be really close to a high-profile actor and someone who committed suicide, and he was on the inside and had all of this really fascinating information and drama and growth because of it. And we made it into a screenplay inspired by true events, but we fictionalized a lot of it. We met up with a entertainment lawyer the other day, shared the script with her in the pitch deck, and she eviscerated it. We learned in very clear language where exactly the line between fiction and reality can meet, especially with these big name events and real people. And so as a result, we had to go and completely change everything. Just make sure that there was enough distance between the real events and our events so that there was no crossover. This would have been a really tough thing to do, except that we knew our core. And we're lucky about this because I worked with the real guy who was in the experiences, and the core of the story is the core of his experiences. It's how he changed as a result of this, and it's something that was very true and impactful and was the reason why I was kind of attracted to this story in the first place. And so because I knew exactly how I wanted this character to grow and change, it didn't really matter who the celebrity was, because the only thing that really matters is how this character changes and grows as a result of some big impactful event. If you know the core, it's easier to work it into the next version of the script and continue making something even better. All right, so the third component, get ready to pivot. This happens when you are finally getting some ground, someone's excited about your script, you're kind of moving forward, and then they hit you with, we really like what you've done, but we want something that's kind of like it, but different. And they hit you with a completely different project. And this is something that happens, unfortunately, quite a bit. This is one of the more difficult components of resiliency, because it comes at a time when you've really worked hard on something, you've put it together, and now it feels like all of that work is wasted. Well, the good news is that that work wasn't wasted. That old project isn't destroyed. It's not being forgotten from your memory. You can still sell it to someone else. You can still use it. it's not wasted work. Secondly, maybe there's aspects that you can use in this new story. Maybe the characters can be shifted over. Maybe just the locations need to be changed. Maybe the core could be shifted over. But in the case where you do have to make a completely different thing, unfortunately, this is just one of those times where as a screenwriter, you just have to be resilient and be ready to make a new thing. And trust that eventually you'll come back to this. So how do you get better at these three things? Well, first and foremost, sharing your work. Every time you're sharing your work, every time you're getting feedback, you're getting better at being resilient because you're learning how to take feedback. You're learning how to look at your work with an outside editor view. And where do you share it? There's a lot of places online that you can do. There's paid options. Coverfly is one, and you can be submitting on there and getting feedback. But they also have a free thing, Coverfly X, where you can go on and you exchange with other screenwriters. Maybe the advice won't be always the greatest because it's just from other screenwriters who are learning like you, but you're gonna get some feedback anyways, and you're gonna gain a lot of resiliency through this process. There's things on Facebook, there's local screenwriting groups. Find someone out there who knows how to write and see if you can switch with them. And also read their screenplay and give them feedback, because giving coverage and learning how to give feedback to other people is going to make you a lot better of a writer as well. Second exercise is writing down the core of your idea of whatever project you're working on. A lot of people, I'm always surprised, don't really know what the core of their idea is. So I'd encourage you to sit down and be like, what is the core? Like, what is, maybe the theme is another way to say this. If I did have to change everything, like let's say you have to change the genre and you change it from a drama to a horror, or from a horror to a period piece, could it still work? Could the story stand? And if it can't, maybe the core isn't quite as strong as you think it is. Writing down the core and then sharing it with people around. Here's what my screenplay is about. And if they react in a positive way and they understand it, then this is meaning that you're pretty much on the right track. If they look at you and they're very confused, then keep tweaking. Core of the script that I discussed earlier, it's about a young man and an older man learning to use their authentic voices and learn forgiveness. That's the core. So I can make that into a horror movie if I had to. Another exercise that you could do to practice being ready to pivot is that maybe take your project and write out a bunch of other ideas. I challenge you to do 10. If you had to write an adjacent script to this, what would that look like? If you had to change the main character's gender, if you had to make it a detective, try to find like 10 prompts from that and write out how your story would change if you had to do this. Thinking through this will allow you to get a better perspective on your story and be ready when the producer hits you with, we want to go in a different direction. This will also really expand your resiliency, even just thinking about this. So in conclusion, that's the most important tip. Thanks for watching. If you have any other tips on how to improve your resiliency, share them. Something I'm still working on a lot. This week has been a little discouraging because of those 3 things all happened in the last few days. I don't think they're bad things. I know that things are going to be moving forward, but I figured I'd make a video about it. So comment if you have any ideas. Thanks for being here. Love you lots.